I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you're trying to warn a sentient tree about an impending catastrophic war.
Okay, that's a wild image.
Right. But just go with me. You're desperately trying to explain that this army is marching toward the forest, axes in hand, ready to chop everything down.
Sounds terrifying.
Yeah, you're pointing, you're shouting, you're painting this vivid picture of imminent destruction. But there is a massive catch.
Oh.
This tree, it takes a full day just to process the word hello.
Oh.
Yeah, and that is the exact imaginative scenario used to describe the terrifying mismatch between the lightning-fast progress of artificial intelligence and our incredibly slow government policy-making apparatus.
Yeah, that classic image of the hobbits trying to wake up Treebeard from Tolkien's lore, it perfectly encapsulates the anxiety of this specific moment in history.
It really does.
Because the threat, or at least the change, is moving at the speed of fiber optics. And the defense, well, it's moving at the speed of parliamentary procedure.
Welcome to Deep Cuts and Deep Thinking.
Glad to be here.
Today, the mission of our deep dive is to unpack Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei's essay, Policy on the AI Exponential. We are pulling apart his June 2026 blueprint just to try and understand what happens when the curve of progress goes completely vertical.
Right, because according to Dario Amodei, the timeline has compressed far, far beyond what anyone expected.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. In just 4 short years, AI has gone from, barely being able to string together a coherent script in Python to literally writing the vast majority of the back-end code at major technology companies.
It's staggering. And within just 1 or 2 years from today, Amodei predicts we are going to hit what he calls powerful AI.
Which he describes with a phrase that genuinely sticks in your mind. He calls it a country of geniuses in a data center.
A country of geniuses.
Yeah.
If you try to visualize the practical implications of that, I mean, it is not just a smart search engine anymore.
Right. It's way beyond that.
It is millions of virtual domain-specific experts, and they're clocking in at 9 a.m., but they never sleep.
You don't take a lunch break.
Exactly. They never take a weekend off, and they operate at speeds that are basically incomprehensible to a human brain.
Now, having a country of geniuses at your fingertips, I mean, that sounds utopian on the surface, but it also sounds incredibly dangerous if the guardrails fail.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why we are seeing a massive shift in how the industry is actually talking about this.
Right.
The old strategy of wait and see, that is completely dead. The stakes have fundamentally changed.
And to understand why, we really just have to look at the recent Claude Mythos preview, right?
Yeah. When that preview dropped, it did not just write better poetry. It demonstrated the ability to autonomously seek out and actually exploit zero-day vulnerabilities in simulated financial networks.
Wait, so it's acting like a hacker?
It acted like an independent, relentless penetration tester. It proved beyond any doubt that these frontier models, they possess the raw capability to disrupt the financial sector.
Wow.
They can cripple critical infrastructure and directly threaten national security.
So it's not theoretical anymore?
No, not at all. Amodei's core argument in the essay is that the era of treating AI like a harmless consumer application is just over. We have to activate our slow, rickety policy apparatus immediately.
And he lays out 5 critical areas of society that require absolute immediate policy intervention.
Right.
But to understand how we handle this virtual country of geniuses, we first really have to understand Amodei's own evolution on regulation.
Because his stance has changed a lot.
It has. Back in 2024 and 2025, Anthropic and other major safety advocates, they were explicitly pushing back against heavy-handed rules.
That's right.
They were really only supporting basic transparency legislation, things like SB 53 in California or RAISE in New York.
Just transparency, yeah.
So I'm trying to square that with his current stance. Why the sudden pivot from just wanting transparency to demanding strict enforcement?
Well, the previous hesitation, it was rooted in 2 major economic and regulatory theories. The first is something called the Collingridge dilemma.
The Collingridge dilemma.
Yeah. It's this historical observation that regulating a new technology too early is almost impossible, because you just cannot predict its secondary effects.
Oh, I see. Like, you don't know what you're actually regulating yet.
Exactly. Think about the early days of social media. In 2004, you could not regulate a platform that was just used by college students to rate profile pictures.
Right. It seemed totally harmless.
But by the time it was influencing global elections a decade later, the infrastructure was too entrenched to easily manage.
That makes total sense. And what was the second theory?
The second theory is about Hayekian knowledge gaps.
Okay, Hayekian knowledge gaps.
This means that government regulators generally lack the deeply complex, highly technical information needed to make the right trade-offs on the ground.
So the regulators just don't understand the tech well enough.
Right. So if you regulate a nascent industry, you often just end up creating a burdensome bureaucracy. And that bureaucracy spends all its time enforcing compliance for things that do not actually mitigate the real risk.
But according to Dario Amodei's essay, the landscape has completely shifted.
Yes. The risks are no longer theoretical.
They are undeniable, and we know exactly what they look like now.
Exactly.
So now he is calling for binding, mandatory regulation for frontier models. To put this in perspective for you listening, AI is no longer a fun app on your smartphone.
It's really not?
It's like a commercial airplane. If it fails its pre-flight safety check, it gets grounded.
That's a great way to look at it.
He's actually advocating for an agency modeled on the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, but specifically for artificial intelligence.
Right. Under his proposal, any model that crosses a predetermined massive threshold of computing power, it would be legally required to undergo mandatory third-party testing.
And this testing, it's not just a vague ethical review, right?
No, not at all. It is a rigorous audit looking for 4 distinct capabilities.
Which are?
Cybersecurity threats, biological weapons generation, loss of AI control, and automated research and development that could accelerate those first 3 risks.
Okay, those are very specific, very scary risks.
Yes. And if a model fails these specific tests, the government must possess the actual legal authority to block deployment.
Now, I'm looking at this FAA model, and I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical.
Skeptical how?
Well, the FAA is notorious for incredibly long delays and massive red tape. I am wondering how Amodei avoids trapping the tech sector in the exact bureaucratic nightmare he was trying to avoid just a year ago.
It's a very fair point.
Right. Doesn't an agency with the power to block deployment just kill innovation, especially for, startups?
Well, Amodei addresses that friction directly in the essay. The mechanism that prevents arbitrary political overreach is that compute threshold.
So it doesn't apply to everyone.
Exactly. This agency is not policing a college student building a local application in their dorm room, or even a mid-sized startup fine-tuning an open-source model.
Okay.
It only applies to the absolute frontier, the massive models that cost billions of dollars to train.
So it's very targeted.
Highly targeted. By strictly limiting the scope to those 4 existential risks and applying it only to massive compute clusters, the regulators remain highly focused. It's a pragmatic compromise.
Okay, that makes sense. We have to design concrete policies for the cyber dangers emerging today, while building the legal foundation to handle tomorrow's risks.
Right, things like recursive self-improvement or extreme biological threats.
That sets up a fascinating dynamic. So let's say we get the regulatory framework perfect, the FAA of AI works, the dangerous models are grounded, and the safe ones are cleared for takeoff.
Okay.
That unleashes millions of safe, compliant geniuses into the global economy.
It does.
And that shifts us into the second major policy area he talks about, macroeconomics and jobs.
Yeah.
Because the impact on the human workforce is going to be seismic.
Amodei predicts robust, hyper-accelerated economic growth that will basically shatter traditional forecasting models.
Wow.
But he pairs that prediction with a severe warning about massive, enduring job displacement.
Now, historically, we have always been told that technology destroys old jobs, but creates new ones, right?
Standard economic argument, yeah.
The tractor replaced the plow, but it created mechanics and factory workers. But Amodei seems to be arguing that this time is fundamentally different.
He is arguing that AI is different because it is a direct substitute for human cognition itself. It's not rather than a tool to amplify human muscle or basic calculation.
Oh, I see.
We are not replacing the horse anymore. We are replacing the driver.
Wow. Okay. That is a chilling way to put it.
So the core economic challenge flips entirely. For centuries, governments have struggled with how to incentivize economic growth and productivity.
Right. How to make the pie bigger.
Exactly. But in a post-powerful AI world, massive growth is functionally guaranteed. The new problem is simply finding a logistical way to share that immense wealth.
He brings up some specific policy solutions in the essay, like wage insurance for the short term.
Yeah, wage insurance is a key part of his proposal.
I read that section, but I'm struggling to see the mechanics of it. If millions of people are suddenly displaced, how can the government afford to just pay the difference in everyone's salary? The math feels impossible.
Well, the math only works because of the unprecedented capital generated by the AI sector itself.
Oh, so the AI is paying for it.
Basically. Under wage insurance, if your job is displaced and you have to take a lower paying role while you retrain, the government steps in to cover the gap between your old salary and your new one.
Okay, that would remove a lot of the financial terror of the transition.
Precisely. And long term, Amodei argues we will inevitably need universal basic income.
UBI.
Right. And both of these programs would be funded by heavily taxing the staggering capital gains and productivity windfalls generated by those data center geniuses.
Speaking of data centers, the essay makes a really sharp observation about the current public pushback against them.
It's a very interesting sociological point he makes.
Yeah, because people are showing up to town halls complaining about energy prices, water usage, and massive server farms ruining the landscape. But Amodei suggests this hostility is actually a proxy for something much deeper.
Right. He views the anger directed at data centers not merely as an infrastructure concern, but as a subconscious psychological outlet.
Meaning what, exactly?
People are deeply anxious about their economic future. They're worried about being replaced.
Right.
And a sprawling data center, well, that is the physical, concrete manifestation of that invisible algorithmic threat.
Gives people a building they can actually point to and protest.
Exactly. You can't protest a cloud, but you can protest a massive concrete building taking up your local grid.
I have to push back on this overall vision, though, because it feels incredibly bleak to me. Even if the government perfectly manages the taxes and everyone gets a universal basic income check, if a machine can do literally everything better than you, why bother doing anything at all?
It's the ultimate existential question.
It feels like a recipe for a massive crisis of human purpose.
The essay actually tackles that philosophical crisis with a surprisingly optimistic counterpoint, though.
Really?
Yeah, Amodei notes that we already live in a world where machines outcompete us in specific domains, yet we still find meaning in those activities.
Give me an example.
Well, we still dedicate our entire lives to playing chess, right? Even though a computer has been able to crush the human world champion since the late 90s.
Oh, that is a fair point.
We don't stop playing just because a machine is better.
Yeah, I guess it's like a helicopter can get you to the summit of Mount Everest in minutes, but you don't brag about taking a helicopter at a dinner party.
Exactly.
The value is in the climb.
That is precisely the point Amodei is making. We do these things for the challenge, the internal growth, and the human connection. Policy can solve the logistical puzzle of the economy by distributing capital. But society, all of us, we must collectively solve the meaning puzzle. We have to redefine what a fulfilling life looks like when our identity is no longer tied to our labor.
That's a huge shift in how we view ourselves. So if the wealth generated by these data centers solves the economic side, we have to look at where that massive pool of capital and intelligence is being directed.
Right, it's not just sitting in bank accounts.
Exactly. It is being poured into research and development, which brings us to the third policy area, speeding up the good stuff.
This is where the policy problem flips completely.
Right, because in our first section, we talked about building an agency to slow down dangerous AI. But Amodei points out that for beneficial industries, our regulatory agencies need to drastically speed up.
And the primary bottleneck he identifies here is biomedical innovation.
Okay, medical research.
Currently, agencies like the FDA in the United States and the EMA in Europe, they require an average of 7 to 8 years to approve a new drug.
7 to 8 years? That's a lifetime for someone who is sick.
It is. But this timeline is the result of deeply pessimistic, historically justified assumptions.
What do you mean?
Well, because most traditional drug candidates fail, or they have unforeseen side effects, agencies are forced to put them through years of grueling, skeptical, real-world testing.
Okay, I picture the FDA operating like a single-lane toll booth on a highway. It works perfectly fine when there is only a trickle of cars coming through.
Right.
But AI is about to send a massive fleet of sports cars representing thousands of highly effective, life-saving drugs barreling toward this toll booth.
And it will cause a massive bureaucratic traffic jam.
Exactly. So my question is, how do we widen the lanes and speed up the process without accidentally waving through a bunch of snake oil that ends up harming people?
Well, Amodei is very clear in the essay that he is not advocating for lowering safety standards. He is advocating for entirely different methods of proof.
Different methods of proof. How would that work?
Currently, we force scientists to conduct incredibly slow in vivo human tests, largely because that is the only way we have historically known for sure how a drug behaves.
Right, you have to test it on a person to see what it does to a person.
Exactly. But powerful AI will be capable of running highly accurate biological simulations. For example, Amodei suggests regulatory agencies must build the legal frameworks right now to accept AI-based pharmacodynamics.
Pharmacodynamics, meaning instead of waiting 5 years to observe how a new compound interacts with a human liver, the AI maps the protein folding and cellular interaction perfectly in silicon.
Yes, exactly. The AI simulates the biological mechanism with such high fidelity that real-world testing becomes redundant for those initial safety checks.
That is incredible.
He also points to the use of synthetic control arms in clinical trials.
I'm trying to visualize a synthetic control arm. Does that mean instead of recruiting 1,000 patients and giving half of them the real drug and half of them a sugar pill placebo, you just use AI to simulate the baseline?
That's it. You utilize AI to analyze massive data sets of historical medical records.
Oh, what?
It allows you to perfectly model how the disease would naturally progress in a control group.
So you don't need real people taking placebos.
Right. It means you require far fewer human participants. And crucially, you do not have to deny a sick person a potentially life-saving treatment just to maintain a placebo group.
That's a huge ethical win.
It is. And the trial finishes in a fraction of the time. But the FDA must implement the regulatory standards to accept the synthetic data today, or tomorrow's cures will be trapped in paperwork.
Okay, so we have covered the health and wealth benefits. But all of that assumes this technology is being directed toward the public good.
Right, which is a big assumption.
What happens when this immense intelligence is monopolized by the state or by massive unchecked corporations?
That guides us directly into the fourth area he covers, autocracy and civil liberties.
And this is arguably Amodei's starkest warning, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
He states that powerful AI is the ultimate tool for autocracy.
The ultimate tool.
Because the primary defense against tyranny throughout human history has been human friction.
Human friction. What does that look like?
Well, if a dictator issues an order that is deeply illegal or violently oppressive, human soldiers might mutiny, right?
Right.
Human bureaucrats might quietly leak the documents to the press. Humans have a conscience that slows down totalitarianism.
But an automated drone army does not feel guilt. An AI surveillance system processing millions of text messages does not get tired or call in sick. It routes entirely around the friction of democratic oversight.
Which is why Amodei demands strict preemptive policies in the essay.
What kind of policies?
First, he argues for an absolute ban on the domestic use of fully autonomous weapons. No law enforcement agency should possess the ability to deploy lethal algorithms against citizens.
That seems like a no-brainer, honestly.
Second, he proposes that military AI systems must have constitutional accountability baked directly into their core weights.
Baked in, like mathematically.
Yes. It means the system is mathematically trained to recognize and respect the legal chain of command and judicial oversight. It would automatically refuse commands that violate its encoded legal parameters.
Wow. He also targets surveillance, specifically a massive loophole regarding data brokers.
Yes, this is a huge privacy issue.
Because right now, the government cannot legally tap your phone without a warrant. But they can just use taxpayer money to buy your location data from a private company.
And Amodei points out that while this loophole is already problematic today, AI makes it catastrophic. When you combine the mass purchasing of internet histories and location pings with the super intelligent analysis engine, the state can instantly map the private lives, associations, and behaviors of every single citizen. Instantly. He insists this data loophole must be closed by Congress immediately.
You know, to me, the most fascinating concept in this entire essay is his proposal for an AI public defender.
Oh, I love this part.
I was reading this and picturing an IRS audit. If the IRS uses a supercomputer to audit a decade of my receipts in microseconds, Amodei argues it would be a fundamental violation of my civil liberties if I did not have a similarly capable AI to fight back on my behalf.
It is a brilliant modernization of the Sixth Amendment right to legal counsel and the Administrative Procedure Act.
How would that work in practice?
In practice, if a government algorithm flags you for an audit or denies your benefits, your designated public defender AI would instantly cross-reference the tax code.
Right.
It would find legal precedents and actively block the state's AI. Amodei's core philosophy here is that the state can never be permitted to hold a monopoly on superhuman intelligence.
And he applies that exact same logic to the private sector, right?
Yes, he does.
He warns about technology companies becoming so powerful they act like the East India Company, wielding quasi-state power without democratic accountability.
Exactly. And he points to Anthropic's own long-term benefit trust as an example.
That's their independent governance body, right?
Yeah, right. It's designed to overrule the corporate board if necessary. He sees that as the kind of structural check and balance we need across the board.
It is really about distributing power. Whether it is a government bureaucracy or a corporate boardroom, consolidated intelligence is inherently dangerous.
Absolutely.
Now, if AI is shifting the balance of power within our own borders to this degree, it is going to completely shatter the rules of global geopolitics.
Well, without a doubt.
And that brings us to the fifth and final section of the essay, securing the global game board.
Amodei does not mince words here. He views artificial intelligence as the new, absolute dominant source of military and economic power on the planet.
Stronger than what we have now.
He describes its strategic impact as even more profound than nuclear weapons.
He uses a historical comparison that really paints a picture for me. He says a nation wielding powerful AI facing a nation without it would be like an army of World War II Marines fighting an army of medieval swordsmen.
Yeah, that visual is striking.
It is not just a tactical advantage. It is a systemic, unbridgeable overmatch.
And because the technology empowers such deep, unbreakable forms of autocratic repression, Amodei argues it is an existential necessity that the nations controlling this technology are democracies.
And what does he propose?
He calls for an immediate international coalition of democratic nations to tightly manage and basically lock down the AI supply chain.
If we aggressively restrict access to the chips and the manufacturing equipment, how does a democratic coalition physically stop an adversary from just building their own foundries and sparking a desperate, massive arms race?
Well, the mechanism of containment relies on the physical reality of semiconductor manufacturing. Building advanced chips is not like building a tank.
It's harder.
Much harder. It requires the most complex supply chain in human history.
Really?
Yeah. It requires extreme ultraviolet lithography lasers that are only produced in Europe. It needs specialized optics from specific democratic allies and ultra-pure chemicals processed in yet another nation.
Oh, wow. I had no idea it was that fragmented.
No single country, not even the United States, can build frontier chips entirely within its own borders.
Okay, so there are physical bottlenecks.
Exactly. By forming a tight coalition, democracies can monopolize these highly specific physical choke points. But Amodei's strategy really relies on the carrot being much larger than the stick.
Meaning they have to offer something good, not just threats.
Right. The coalition must explicitly share the unprecedented economic booms, the advanced biomedical healthcare, and the coordinated cyber defense among its members.
Okay, make everyone want to join.
The goal is to make the benefits of joining so overwhelmingly attractive that even unaligned nations will willingly agree to the coalition's democratic standards. That
effectively contains repressive regimes by making it technologically and economically impossible for them to compete in isolation. So after unpacking all of this, from FAA-style regulation to massive economic shifts to global semiconductor coalitions, what does this actually mean for the timeline?
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, Amodei identifies a fleeting window of opportunity.
A window of opportunity.
Yes. He looks at the current public backlash against AI, the fear, the protests, the demands for regulation, and he does not see it as a public relations failure for the tech industry.
How does he see it then?
He views the backlash as the immune system of democratic accountability working perfectly.
The immune system, that's a great phrase.
The public is worried because they accurately perceive that the risks are genuine. And this friction creates a rare moment where policymakers are actually motivated to take forward-looking actions.
Circling back to our opening metaphor, Treebeard is finally waking up.
He is.
There is an opportunity right now, perhaps on the 21st of the month when the next legislative session begins, to build a nonpartisan coalition and enact sane structural policies before the exponential progress curve goes completely vertical.
It reframes the entire cultural conversation, doesn't it?
It really does. We spend endless hours arguing over whether AI is just a hype bubble or the literal end of the world.
Right.
But Amodei is cutting through the noise. He's stating clearly, the capability is real, The timeline is incredibly short, and we have exactly enough time to build the guardrails if we start building them right this second.
I think that leaves us with a truly profound final thought to mull over.
What's that?
Well, we spend so much mental energy worrying about whether artificial intelligence will destroy the world or whether it will displace our careers.
Sure.
But if Amodei's vision of the future is accurate, and we successfully navigate the policy and we solve the economic puzzle, the most daunting challenge remains personal.
The meaning puzzle.
Exactly. The real question for you as a listener is this. What will you choose to do with your life when you no longer have to work for a living?
That is a heavy question.
When the daily struggle for survival and economic productivity is completely outsourced to a country of virtual geniuses, who will you choose to become?
If you found this podcast interesting, please like and subscribe. Thank you for joining us today,